It only lasted a week, and yet, it was the single most important battle in the entire 20th century. Had it gone even slightly differently, World War I would have ended as soon as 1914, barely within months after its beginning, with a crushing German victory. Very few people remember this dramatic event today, and yet, in early September 1914, on the very outskirts of Paris, French, British, and German forces clashed in an absolutely titanic battle that decided the fate of not only the war, but the history of the entire 20th century as well. If this battle ended with a different outcome, we would have had no Battle of the Somme, no Verdun, no collapse of empires, no Russian Revolution, no communism, no Second World War, no Cold War, and so on. Instead, just an entire different century. In this video, we will see exactly how 30 kilometers north of Paris, an offensive that came so close to succeeding ultimately failed because of a few crucial mistakes that, if they never happened, would have truly seen the German Empire taking over Europe, thus changing the entire world forever. In August 1914, war had just broke out in Europe. And even though it was widely believed at the time that it would be nothing but a quick and glorious adventure, everyone knew that their country's destiny and survival were at stakes. In the German Empire in particular, the military high command was extremely worried. Indeed, they've known for decades that a great war in Europe would have Germany fight a massive two-front war. On the Western Front against France, an historic military powerhouse, and on the Eastern Front against Russia, a gigantic empire whose population growth was exploding at the time. In fact, despite having the most powerful military at the time, the Germans were anticipating that their enemies would soon become stronger than them and that war had to happen sooner rather than later to prevent that from happening. As illustrated by this statement from the German General Chief of Staff, Helmut von Moltke, to the Kaiser and senior officials in August 1914, right at the beginning of the war. We are ready, and we must strike now, because in 2 or 3 years, the Entente will be ready and we will be crushed between Russia and France. For the German leadership, the situation was very clear. If we don't defeat our rivals right now, we will lose within less than 5 years. And with this gruesome prediction in mind, the German Empire was going to strike hard. The priority for the Germans was to avoid a two-front war by crushing one of their two main enemies as fast and as hard as possible. And they already had made a decision long before the war. As explicitly stated by German General Alfred von Schlieffen, as soon as 1905, the whole of Germany must throw itself upon one enemy, the strongest, most powerful, most dangerous enemy, and that can only be France. The same general then came up with the Schlieffen Plan, aiming to mobilize all of Germany's resources in order to crush France by invading through Belgium within 6 weeks, secure peace on the Western Front as fast as possible, then turn their gigantic war machine against the Russian Empire in the east, before they grew too strong to be defeated. On the 1st of August, Germany declared war on Russia. On the 3rd of August, Germany then declared war on France. On the 4th of August, the Germans started a massive offensive by invading through Belgium, following the Schlieffen Plan as anticipated. And the German Empire's plan was working terrifyingly well. The German troops were advancing at lightning speed, and Belgian and French cities were falling one after the other. Liège, Namur, Charleroi, Mons, Maubeuge, nothing could stop the German army that seemed to be completely unstoppable. Meanwhile, the French offensive against the Germans in Alsace-Lorraine resulted in a catastrophic failure. This was nothing short of a mechanized blitzkrieg before World War II. The Germans were relentlessly advancing between 30 to 40 kilometers a day, winning virtually every single battle up to this point. Within weeks, the vast majority of Belgium had already been conquered, the French Fifth Army was retreating, and the British Expeditionary Force, badly weakened, was in full retreat as well. Now, the road to Paris was open, and the fall of the French capital city seemed inevitable. By August 25, French and British forces were in full retreat toward the Marne and the Seine. Panic was taking over Paris, hundreds of thousands of people were leaving the city, and trenches were being dug in the parks of the city. On the 2nd of September, the French government evacuated Paris as well and relocated to Bordeaux. All of these actions making very clear how terrifying the German threat was at the time. The recently appointed military governor of Paris, General Joseph Gallieni, however, was willing to fight to the bitter end. After having prepared evacuations of civilians, Gallieni made his intentions as clear as they could ever be. There is to be no retreat. If necessary, destroy the bridges of Paris. Now, there was no doubt that if the Germans wanted to take Paris, they would be met with fierce resistance. According to the Schlieffen Plan, the Germans were supposed to encircle Paris from the west. However, the German First Army, led by General Alexander von Kluck, shifted from the initial plan without winding his spears and decided to go east instead. This critical mistake opened a huge gap between the German armies. Overstretched and exhausted from the month-long blitzkrieg on the Western Front, the Germans were completely unable to fill this gap and secure their flanks. Furthermore, the Schlieffen Plan had no tolerance for delay or resistance, yet both happened and frustrated initial German plans. French air reconnaissance immediately spotted the weakness in the German advance. General Joseph Joffre, commander-in-chief of the French armies, understood right away that if he wanted to stop the Germans before they took Paris, it was now or never. If he failed to exploit this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, France would lose the war. He had to attack with everything he had. But before he could begin the counter-offensive, he had to secure the British Expeditionary Forces' full support. On the afternoon of September 5, 1914, Joffre went to meet personally with Sir John French, the BEF commander, in order to ask for British support for what was France's last hope before full defeat. Joffre arrived at the meeting with maps in his hands, visibly emotional, in order to show the wide gap that had been opened between the German 1st and 2nd armies. He explained plainly to Sir John French that, if you refuse to cooperate, the French army will be destroyed, and with it France itself. The BEF commander, Sir John French, was first reluctant to commit to the French counteroffensive as he was still bitter with the lack of Allied support at the battles of Mons and Le Cateau. Joffre kept on insisting, "The honor of France is at stake, Monsieur le Maréchal, France is begging you." And as Sir John French was still not convinced, Joffre issued an even more forceful appeal, banging his fist on the table, this time directly in English. "The honor of England is at stake." This time, Sir John French seemed to be really moved and flustered. Unable to give his answer in the French language himself, here's what he said to his interpreter. "Damn it, I can explain it. Tell him that all our men can do, our fellows will do." This was all Joffre needed. On the evening of September 5, right after this very conversation, Joffre issued Order Number 6. The counter-offensive was to begin immediately. On the next morning, the French 6th Army attacked the flank of the German 1st Army, regaining precious lost ground, while the BEF advanced into the widening gap between the 1st and 2nd German armies. By September 12, pressures on both sides forced the Germans into general retreat further north to the Aisne River, symbolically stating to the world that all hopes for a quick war were lost, and that it was nothing but the beginning. During the Battle of the Marne, over 2 million soldiers from both sides engaged in a titanic struggle to determine the course of the war. In a single week, more than 500,000 soldiers were either killed, injured, taken prisoners, or disappeared, making it one of the deadliest weeks in the entire European military history. The chief of German General Staff, General Helmut von Moltke, reportedly experienced a complete mental breakdown during and after the German retreat. Shortly after realizing that full retreat was inevitable, Moltke allegedly said to the Kaiser, "Your Highness, we have lost the war." At the same time, he wrote to his wife, "Things have not gone well. The fighting east of Paris has not gone in our favor, and we shall have to pay for the damage we have done." Many factors led to the ultimate German failure at the Marne. First, the Schlieffen Plan had zero tolerance for any delay or last-minute change of plan, as it required all Western Front forces to march precisely in a certain direction within a very strict time frame. Belgian resistance, most notably at Liège, far exceeded what the Germans had anticipated, and delayed the advance by at least 5 days. Second, the Russians mobilized 2 armies very fast on the Eastern Front and invaded German territory within 2 weeks, while the Germans thought the Russians would need at least 6 weeks before they could become a threat. The Germans redeployed about 80,000 men from the Western Front to the east, and this critical lack of manpower in the assault toward Paris might have greatly contributed to creating the gap between the 1st and 2nd German armies. Third, they didn't think that the British would commit this fast to the defense of France. Fourth, the Germans greatly underestimated French resilience and willingness to fight, as well as their ability to absorb high casualties and military catastrophes. All these mistakes combined created the exact circumstances the French and the British needed to decisively counterattack and alter the course of history. If the Germans had won, they would most likely have entered Paris within a week, forced peace upon France, negotiated a separate peace treaty with England, and would then only have had to face Russia, which the German Empire already crushed in our existing timeline. The First World War would have ended as soon as 1914, maybe 1915 at best, with a crushing German victory. This would have taken history in a completely different trajectory that our modern minds wouldn't be able to comprehend. Think about everything you know about history from 1914 onwards. The massive trench battles of the Somme and Verdun, the Brest-Litovsk and Versailles treaties, the fall of almost all the European empires and traditional monarchies, the Russian Civil War, the creation of the USSR, the Great Depression, the rise of the Nazis, the Gulag, the Second World War, the conquest of half of Europe by Russia, the Cold War, the Cuban Missile Crisis, the Vietnam War, the fall of the Berlin Wall, the Gulf Wars, the age of the internet. All of these historic events having happened only because of the outcome of a titanic battle that didn't even last a week, planned in the discussion between two men that despise each other from two countries that were bitter rivals for 1,000 years prior to this point in history. Our entire modern history shaped within barely 100 hours that must have felt like decades for the people participating in them. The Battle of the Marne is, without a doubt, the single most important battle of the 20th century. So this is why I strongly believe that our entire modern history was shaped by this one battle. I hope you enjoyed this video. If that is the case, please like, share, comment and subscribe. And if that is your will, I'll see you in the next one.